So we're here to talk about securing data in the cloud. This is not technically a panel in that I am not the moderator of the panel. I say that so you know why I'm talking. It's not just because I'm talking over my panelists. We're going to use this as a roundtable where I will kick it off, and then we'll get questions back and forth between the three of us before we kick it out to the audience. I'm the CEO of OpSource. OpSource provides a public cloud infrastructure, the 4 cents a CPU hour, 2.5 cents a RAM hour. We do that, have done that primary for application providers in the cloud, companies like Exactly and Taleo, or larger software companies like Adobe and SAP who are delivering applications into the cloud. And we now do that directly to end users as well as through some of our telecom partners like NTT and providing the NTT America cloud. To my right is Kazu Gomi, the CEO of NTT America. He brings a really interesting perspective here. I think many people would understand as they would tell you that NTT America's primary goals is to serve multinational Japanese companies, some of the most conservative and staid companies in the world. What people don't know often about NTT America is that they're actually, NTT America alone is the 3rd largest provider of network to Google. Worldwide, out of there's something like 90 different providers, just NTT America is number 3 there. And NTT America provides all of the services from hosting to network and security for a small internet startup called Twitter. And so for all the expertise they have on the enterprise compute side, they have a long expertise as well in dealing with these kind of next generation cloud applications. And then to that is Bill Yeack, EVP of Integralis, one of the world's leading security firms. And for Bill, I'm giving a little personal history on him. Bill actually ran services for a company called Exodus back in the mid-90s. And Exodus, for those of you who remember them, were the first large-scale internet hosting company for very big internet sites. And their #1 services product, which I would say was probably the first cloud services product, was managed security. So when I say Bill's been doing security in the cloud longer than anyone, I can say that with probably a pretty straight face and know that that's true, to a depth where he could probably do this entire panel 3 times over by himself without us participating. I want to jump into this concerns about securing data in the cloud, because it's obviously been a huge concern for people out there who are worried about putting their data out there. And we actually had this conversation earlier. Sometimes there's a tendency to say, hey, the cloud is perfectly secure. People who don't want to put their data there are basically just being kind of old-fashioned. They want to hold on to it. And the fact of the matter is there are many applications out there in the cloud today, especially around what people are doing in SaaS, that are very likely to be more secure than what most corporate enterprises have in place. For example, all of my employees get background checked. We've been through 4 audits in the last 3 months from everything from HIPAA to PCI to I had to personally get background checked by the Canadian government. There's really and the network security levels are much easier, and of course you don't deal with laptops. That said, when people think about the cloud, a lot of times they're thinking about this new cloud infrastructure. The ability to get servers in the cloud, the ability to get storage in the cloud, on-demand, API accessible. And while there's probably no inherent problems with the cloud in and of itself in terms of security, there are a number of concerns about using cloud infrastructure to host your data. And with that, I have some of my own, but I'm going to actually first kick it over to Bill and say, so Bill, if you're thinking about using cloud infrastructure products, what are the #1 things? What should you be thinking about to secure your data, and what should you be concerned about?
I think the biggest issue is first identifying what type of data you're trying to secure. And if you look at the threat vectors and what's really going on, you'll see that the most unlikely data is the highest value for someone trying to steal it from you. Let's just do a little thing right here. What do you go around here? What do you think is the most important data someone can steal from you? Has anyone got credit cards? I'm sorry? Your ID?
There's something that's worth 10 times as much to a crook as your credit card data.
Right. Email address. Social Security. It's actually nothing you have. It's from your employees. It's their Facebook data. Treb?
Current market rate on a Facebook account is $50 an account current for a fake credit card is 5. The reason why is once the criminals have access to a Facebook account, they can run a variety of scams on the user, plus they can identify far better false identities than they're able to do by just getting the credit card number. Most credit card numbers are being caught by the different programs and the like that are out there. The number one thing the crooks want to steal from your data is your employee data and your consumer information data. They don't really care much about your corporate planning and strategy. Not a lot of money in that relative to how much you can make stealing out that corporate and consumer data. And it's often the stuff that people are keeping in the cloud.
That's right.
Yeah, and then at the end of the day, it seems like the cloud, when the cloud came up, a lot of the security concerns came up. But to me, at the end of the day, the issue is that how much control you have from the end user's point of view. Where the data is stored, how the data is kept, and who are the person doing that. Well, like Treb introduced earlier, from service provider's point of view, we have all the physical securities in the data centers, and we have all the employees with the background checked and everything. But I guess we are not probably doing the, well, probably 100% good job to telling people that those kind of stuff. So probably that's what it's coming from. But at the same time, I see some of the issues lately from the, especially the government perspective, and I know that some of the health industries and stuff that where the data is stored, especially you cannot cross the border where the data is stored. And then especially when it comes to the cloud, obviously the cloud is global, internet is global, so you don't know, you can't trust where the data is stored. So that's another area that the people have some concerns how that, you know, the cloud and security issues coming together.
Yeah, my problem, I think the large issues are the fact that the vast majority of cloud infrastructure, you know, the cloud itself comes from, and I always ask this question, how many people know why it's called the cloud? I ask this, I go to cloud conferences, honest to goodness, and maybe 10% of people know why it's called the cloud. It's because that's how you represented the internet at the top of the drawing. It'd be like calling storage the drum industry, and we do call servers the box industry. No, we drew the cloud to represent the internet. Of course, networks before then, X25 and stuff goes back for years. But really, since the mid-90s, it's been the internet. And I think when you understand that, you understand that when we're talking about the cloud, we are talking about the internet. And what people like about the cloud are generally things they like about the internet. It's immediate, it's super flexible, it's cheap, right? You know, it's all those items. But it's essentially been a consumer technology up to now. You know, the internet, you know, how you're going to handle, though we just said it's your worst security, a super wall post compared to how you're going to handle your corporate financials are two very different things. And that you can, the marks of the evolution about it being a consumer item is all over it in some areas that would have real concerns for anybody who's dealing with a corporate enterprise. And I can get into things like network layer security and the fact that it's all a big flat network. We talked about hypervisor attacks, and we may get into some of those. My number one is user policy management, right? Or even simple. We talked in terms of federated authority, single sign-on. Got in the cloud and realized that the vast majority of cloud infrastructures, from Amazon to Rackspace to even like VMware's own vCloud Express, only give you one username and password for your entire company. And that username and password, of course, is a root username and password for every single element within the cloud. You can't do auditing because you have one username and password. You can't do policy-based controls because you have one username and password. It would be as if you went to Salesforce and said, I want 1,000 of my salespeople to be on Salesforce.com. And they said, here, by the way, is your one username and password. And by the way, it's an admin username and password. And to make it even worse than that, you know, the nature of the cloud is it's very flexible. That username and password has an open PO to buy as much as they want in these environments. Generally, it's limited to about 750 new servers a month. You know, 20 cents an hour sounds very cheap, but it can add up. It's kind of like 25 cents a text sounds real cheap unless you have a 13-year-old and you don't have her on the right plan. As I discovered, you're getting that, hey, the IT equivalent of, hey, Dad, I've used 800 texts in 3 days and I only have 200 on my plan as people are spinning up these resources. So obviously, one of the biggest areas you've got to think about is who's using the cloud in your organization and how do you have some modicum of control over who they're doing and how they're accessing those systems. in environments that weren't designed to be multi-user. I mean, it's like using Windows 3.0 here without having the ability of separate logouts.
Yeah, but there's two key pressures going to the cloud. I mean, one is the economics. It's about 10% the cost of doing it yourself today. And then the second one is your employees. Your new employees are not used, that you say mainframe, they won't know what that is, okay? They're not used to a central server. They're not used to just a laptop. They're used to doing cloud-type computing. And it's the natural state. So you've got this huge force, and what happened is enterprise IT is really not set up to deal with these issues. And so you have to change your procurement, you have to change your legal. You know, it's like if you have a problem with Amazon, what's the 800 number you call? You don't, okay? You know, you're used to choking your provider when they screw up, right? There's no choking. So it's a different way of doing business. And so now you're talking about securing data, okay?
Right.
Your payroll data disappears. What are you going to do? You have to, it's not the technology that's the issue. It's learning how to control your use of it with a different way of dealing with a provider. The technology will follow.
Yeah, yeah. It's, well, and it's one of our big comments is you could say, I'm not going to allow that, or I want stuff in the data center, but you have users, and let's be blunt, even your own IT guys. I mean, I don't know about, in our organization now, we're beginning to have system administrators who work for us who've never actually physically touched a server. You know, and you could think about them learning to spin up stuff when they were in high school and deploying systems that they never actually touch anymore. And how you can control data in your, if you say no, but you know, they can just go online and put down a corporate credit card or personal credit card they even expense and have a server up and running in 2 hours, or 2 hours, 5 minutes, you're going to have employee data.
Yeah, so just a follow-up question on the securing the data. So how about compliance? I mean, we don't have a problem. We know, okay, let's have this vendor. We can use them as a partner, and they'll have our data over the cloud. But it is not so much of the malicious users out there who want to attack your data, but it is the liability or the compliance requirement that the vendor or that data needed to be secured a certain way. So the vendor that we have to work with have to prove to us that they can comply to that regulation. And at the same time, then what happens on the liability side if that data gets compromised?
Right, and it's made much more complicated, at least for us, because we do a lot of global instances. So, you know, US shores only, Chinese, Russia, so we deal with a lot of complexity with different laws and different rules. In the United States, employers have the right to see personal data. In Germany, you're prohibited from seeing personal data. So it's not a single set of coherent compliance issues. It's just a whole mosaic of conflicting issues on top of a single cloud. So that's why a lot of people are doing, going to more of a smaller providers where they can have isolated instances. There's a lot of good sandbox work going on in clouds, you know, doing it for a test system. There's a lot of valid things. I'm just saying, I think the most important thing is really understanding, like you said, the SLAs, the compliance, what is your provider doing? I mean, Treb's been audited by the Canadians come down. I mean, I don't know how many countries have come in and like asked to do a background check against him. I mean, he's going to give out tickets out front of his house